your favorite podcast, and it is a special evening tonight. I'm excited about what we're going to talk about, but before we get into it, my name is Mark MF Jones, and I am so happy to be talking about this subject with my best buddy. Why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
This is Niels RY, aka Bread Makes You Fat. Mark, I'm so hyped. You
That's a
know
good
how
one.
much I love this property. You know
Yes.
how much I love this universe. This is a staple in the story of our friendship. This
Yes, it
has a
is.
chapter. This entire series has a chapter in the story of our friendship. So yeah, this is an exciting moment in the history of pop cult that we're gonna finally get to talk about Scott Pilgrim, or at least an aspect of Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah. And as Nell said, we are talking about Scott Pilgrim, the show, the video game, the books, the movie, the IP. And the reason why we're talking about it is because Netflix just released its anime series, Scott Pilgrim
Takes off.
Takes Off. And we were like, hey, we've been trying to talk about Scott Pilgrim. We've been trying to fit this movie in, this comic book in, this game in, and we just felt like this was the best time to do it. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to talk about just Scott Pilgrim as a whole. We're going to talk about this new Netflix show, what it means to us, and we're just going to get right into it.
All right, so Mark, I'll give a quick breakdown, just some some super quick history because we got plenty to talk about. So, as Mark shared, Scott Pilgrim is interpreted through a multiple mediums, but the origination of Scott Pilgrim is a graphic novel series that came out between 2004 to 2010, written by Brian Lee O'Malley. And yes, in case you are wondering, he is actually Canadian. He lives in Toronto, or I guess when he was making these books, he lived in Toronto. And so that's why Toronto is such a big character. While he was writing the graphic novels were doing so well, sold millions of copies. He won awards, writing awards for this. The movie company was like, yo, we got to make a movie on Scott Pilgrim. And they hire Edgar Wright to make a movie that came out in 2010. And Mark, I'm going to talk about the cast for a bit, but I just wanted to name in case you wanted to say anything. Wright is probably the best director for this kind of property. They knocked it out the park, and getting that kind of guy for this kind of IP, his movies all seem like they're video games anyway. And in themselves, you have to suspend belief when you watch an Edgar Wright movie. So we're talking about your Shawns of the Deads, your Hot Fuzz. You have to there's just a
he has a
weirdness of the
kineticism.
world.
He has a kineticism about his filmmaking, and I'm just going to talk a little bit because I have so much to talk about Edgar Wright. Yeah, he just has a flow. His editing. Here's one thing, and I'll just leave it at this, and we can move on. One thing I realized, because I rewatched the movie also for this podcast. Edgar Wright, he shoots jokes to be set up and have punchlines, right? What we get now in movies and comedy, they just point a camera at people and they're like, all right, improvise, say something silly, do something silly, and that's it. The camera doesn't move. It just, and people wobble wobble dooba doo, and then they fall down or whatever. Edgar Wright will be like, okay, when you say this word of this phrase, turn to your left, then I'm going to turn the camera this way, and then we're going to shoot it the reverse. He sets up jokes in his filmmaking, and it pays off so much. For instance, the Ramona in the movie, when Ramona delivers the package to Scott and he grabs it and he just throws it over his shoulder,
yes,
and it lands. They did that 30, 40 times just to get that one shot, and you don't see that in movies. And there's so many more examples that I can't think off the top of my head, but he where people will
him jumping out the window when Knives comes to the door.
Yes.
That is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
But that's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, man. He's great for this property and this kind of filmmaking.
I can't wait to hear you nerd out more about Edgar Wright, because you're bringing an element of dopeness I ain't even realized. So, Mark, I just want to quickly talk about this cast for this 2010 movie. For those of you who have not watched Scott Pilgrim, you probably know of Scott Pilgrim because it was this random movie that was like the infinity gauntlet of like what Hollywood would be, the folks who would be running Hollywood like within the next 10 years. Like this cast was star-studded, but like they weren't stars when this
Then
movie came out. So let me just name the cast.
Sarah
And
was probably the biggest star. He was the biggest star when this
you
movie
stole
came.
my punchline, Mark. You stole
Oh,
my
I'm
punchline.
sorry. I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to.
But I'll say it here. I'm going to name all the people and what they're known for. But Mark just named it. Michael Cera, at the time when this movie came out, was the biggest star out of all of them. So, anyways, let's go. Michael Cera was Scott Pilgrim. Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who plays Ramona Flowers, she was known for, after this, The Thing, Cloverfield Lane.
Yep.
She's essentially the sci-fi drama queen. Like, if you think of a sci-fi movie that came out in the past 10 years,
She's probably been in it.
She's either been in it, or if she was in it, you would be like, oh, that makes sense. So she's sci-fi drama queen. Kieran Culkin, Macaulay's little brother, he's Wallace Wells. He was in Succession, arguably one of the best shows. A prominent role in Succession, one of the best shows that came out in the past. I don't even know past, like, since the pandemic. So
it's a great show, and he's great in it. It's not just like, hey, no, he is like doing some heavy lifting in that show.
There you go. Anna Kendrick has a minor role as Scott's little sister, and she goes on after this to do Pitch Perfect. All the Pitch
the
Perfect
whole friend
movies.
and those troll movies.
And Trolls.
She doesn't have to work a day in her life ever again. Like
she can make troll movies from now till when she's dead and gone. Her and Justin. Y'all think Justin ain't been in movies because he's just like recording some heat? Justin ain't recording no heat. He's making stupid money from Trolls. They found this lane through Trolls, and they are riding that sucker out. Justin is so content in syncs back together. That is how comfortable Justin Timberlake is. You know what I'm saying? So Trolls is doing great, and Anna Kendrick's in it.
And before they even got back together, he's like, "We're gonna get back together in this Trolls movie, and then we can get back together in real life."
He had to show him. He's like, "Don't never tell me that I ain't put y'all on. I'm giving y'all some of this sweet troll money.
This Trolls money, done."
Oh God!
Oh man.
Anyway, that's Anna Kendrick.
This episode of Pop Cult Parent is brought to you by Black Nerd Coffee. Black Nerd Coffee was started by Elliot and Annie, two HBCU grads who became obsessed with making the perfect cup of coffee you can enjoy black, no cream or sugar. In their journey to create the perfect cup of coffee, they wanted to learn as much as they could and share that knowledge with their family, friends, and community. That desire to learn more became a delicious obsession. Over the years, they have enjoyed trying, celebrating, and sharing coffees from around the world. They believe that taking the time to make the perfect cup of coffee is an intentional and therapeutic form of self-care. I have to say, without a doubt, this is the best cup of coffee I've ever had at home, and I've been obsessed with this brand ever since. Want to check out Black Nerd Coffee yourself? Head to blacknerdcoffee.com and use the discount code POP20 to receive 20% off of any 12-ounce single origin coffee. That's POP20, POP20, for 20% off any 12-ounce single origin coffee.
Brie Larson is in this movie. She plays Envy Adams. This woman is Captain Marvel, and she won an Oscar for The Room. And she's in the movie for like 10 minutes. Allison Pill is Kim Pine. She went on to do Star Trek Picard. I can't ruin it for you, but she's in Star Trek Picard, and she plays an important role in Star Trek Picard. And she was in Snowpiercer. She had like she was like one of the teachers in Snowpiercer. So, and of course, there's Aubrey Plaza, who was Julie Powers, who was, of course, in Parks and Rec, and like literally everything else. Literally everything else.
She was April in Parks and Rec, if people don't know.
Yes, she was April in Parks and Rec. Mae Whitman is Roxy Richter. She was in Parenthood, and she was in a bunch of voice acting stuff, including April in the 3D Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Dang.
She's probably the voice acting person after Tara Strong. Like,
and
she's
she
on
had
that
a show
next tier
too. She had a show for a minute with what's her name, who was in Mad Men, and they would like forget what it was called. They were like moms, but they like robbed banks or something.
Oh yeah, that was on NBC. That was after
Yeah,
Parenthood ended. Yeah,
she was
yeah,
in
yeah,
that
yeah.
show.
With the sister from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so Chris Evans plays Lucas Lee. You know Chris Evans. He's Captain America. He played
There. Yeah.
one of the first villains in this movie. Brandon Roth, a whole Superman, was
And
Todd
Cyclops,
Ingram.
right?
Cyclops?
Wasn't he Cyclops?
He wasn't Cyclops.
I thought he was Cyclops as well.
I feel like you're stereotyping your white men. That's James Marsden.
No, oh man, I am stereotyping.
You sure are. You sure? And
I
I'm
did.
keeping it
Oh, is that what that feels like?
in. Yeah, I'm keeping it in.
Is
I'm
that what
keeping
that
it
feels
in.
like? Oh man, they're all
Keeping it
this.
in.
They all look the same.
You confused Brandon Roth with James Marsden. I'm keeping it
Is
in.
that Hugh Jackman? It's like Joe Biden. That's Hugh Jackman.
Wolverine's running for president.
Oh,
Oh
man.
God.
Is that what that feels like? Oh
Yes.
man.
Last cast character I'll name is Jason Schwartzman. Jason Schwartzman was the man, and he still is the man after that. And I'm just gonna say Wes Anderson, in case you're wondering what movie he's been a part of. Just literally look at any Wes Anderson movie. I'm sure
He's in there
9 times out of
somewhere.
10 you'll see him.
He's in there somewhere.
He's doing something there. Anyways, bro,
Oh, man.
that's the cast of the movie.
That's crazy, man. It like I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but yeah, like at the time, Michael Cera, I mean, of course, he was known for Superbad, but he was popping up in everything, having movies here and there, and he was the biggest draw. Let me ask you this, man, because I've contemplated this so much. Recasting this movie, I don't think I would change anybody. They nailed it. They look like their characters. I think they embody who the characters are. I've always had this weird thing about Michael Cera as Scott Pilgrim. Now, that being said, I don't know back in 2009, 10, if anyone else on the scene could have done it. But I'm trying to be like, who else, if anyone? And the thing is, I think it's not that he doesn't nail Scott for me. I think he comes
He
off a
doesn't
little
nail
too.
Scott. Not to interrupt you, Mark, but he doesn't nail Scott.
He comes off a little too meek and like kind of like worrisome.
Yeah,
Than I thought Scott was like in the books, but it still works, and I think he still works
because he's a good actor. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like you had to cast Michael Cera for this role to get the draw that it did. This is the height of his career, man. And this is probably one of the best things he's ever done. And the only thing is, it is the one character they did not nail in casting.
Yeah.
The one.
Yeah.
Everyone is copy and pasted. Wallace Wells, copy and pasted.
Yes.
Lucas Lee, copy and paste. Like it is identical, and they don't change a thing. It's like I see this person in live action, except for Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then again, you may not even had a choice. Like you had to go with Michael Cera if you wanted this draw. The movie may not even have been as big if you picked anybody else. Now, to your question of recasting, bro, I don't know. So when you talk about Scott, you're talking about cocky, slightly arrogant, slightly obnoxious,
but dumb,
airhead, but with the heart.
Yeah, he's
like
a good.
But you're
he
rooting
wants
for him.
to be a good guy, but he's just stupid. He's a waste of life, but he's a good person.
He's a good person, and people are drawn to a lot of Luffy. Now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of Luffy.
Well, well, here's the thing, and I'm glad you said that. I just want to, because the Netflix show kind of did answer my question. When I started watching the Netflix show, I was like, you know what? I wonder if they're going to answer why Scott gets all this ass and why everyone is drawn to Scott, because like he's kind of just I can't think of the word, not a scumbag, but he's kind of just like that friend who's not really doing nothing, doesn't have a job, but somehow is always at the parties, like bumming rides, but like but people still do it for him. They still take care of him and give him stuff. So I was like, I wonder if the show's going to be like, I don't know, Scott is secretly rich, or he just like, because even with Ramona, it's like, what does she see in Scott? I still to this day don't really know what Ramona saw in Scott, and so yeah, it's interesting that you have this loser character, but we still want to root for him.
Yep. And that's one of the reasons why I love this universe so much. It's because Scott is who he is, and despite his flaws, he's still a good guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And the world's still working for like his favor, even though he's like getting his stuff together.
You know what?
So I don't know who to cast for that. That's a hard.
I don't know
person to cast for.
It's the best thing we could have gotten, and at the same time, someone else probably could have done a better job, but we just don't know who.
You know who would have been like a good, like this? He's obviously too old to do it now. This is Matthew McConaughey. This is Ryan Reynolds. Now Ryan's too funny.
He's too he's too he's too in on the joke. Yeah, you know what I mean? You really need just someone who's he's in everything. But if he was really young, maybe what's his name? Ant-Man could have did this.
Paul Rudd, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, Paul Rudd, yeah.
He probably could have nailed it. But he's just too old, and he doesn't look like Scott.
So, I mean, when you go Paul Rudd, then like when you think about the generation under that, funny enough, it's the Jonah Hill, the Michael Cera, this is what, like, I don't know if there was another way to make this movie without him.
Yeah.
Because Jonah Hill's too smart to play Scott Pilgrim. Like, I don't know if he can play that dumb.
I mean, we're just going to get into a little bit of everything because we're having trouble figuring out where to start, right? Do we talk about the Netflix show? We talk about the movie. I will say this, the movie, let's start there because I think before you and I read the books, I remember hearing about the books, but I never read them. But I remember the movie came out and it was just I think it was like a random Saturday. I was at my first apartment I ever had.
Maybe Friday night after work. Yeah. It was one of those things. It was a random weekend.
I think it was like a lazy Sunday situation where I was like, yo, you want to go see this movie called Scott Pilgrim? And you had no idea what it was about. I had no idea what it was about. I just heard it was out.
We saw the trailer. And we're like, that looks cool.
That looks fun. And this is still one of my favorite movie going experiences because we were in there. There was not a lot of people in the movie theater. I think it was like you and me and maybe like 4 other people.
Yep.
But then that Universal logo comes on, but it's playing in the 8-bit.
Yep.
In the 8-bit, like. Man, you and I looked at each other.
Bro, we both looked at each other. We're like, this is about to be a ride.
I'm about to kick my feet up. We about to have a good old time.
Yeah. Mark, we immediately knew this was going to be a good movie. We're like, you made that sound to that part of the opening. Oh, you care. Oh, this is going to be a good show.
And just the movie opens and I want to talk about the world of Scott Pilgrim real quick before we get even further. This world is so cool because and you chime in if you think I'm going off track. It is a normal world, normal in quotation marks, until it's not. And what I mean by that, it is just a normal kind of like teen, young adult drama, young kids living in the city, dealing with relationships and music, whatever, until people start fighting. And when they fight, the movie turns into an anime / comic book / video game. And not just any video game. It turns into a Super Nintendo 16-bit side scroller fighting Super Street Fighter video game.
It's Street Fighter. It turns into Street Fighter. It turns into Mortal Kombat 3. Yeah. Just randomly pull a weapon out at your convenience.
And there's no explanation for it at all. It's just this is how the world works. When people start fighting, it turns into Street Fighter.
So, Mark, this is why in case you were wondering, one of the reasons why I think we all love, but me in particular, loves the Scott Pilgrim universe is because they make it seem like O'Malley in particular, the author, he makes it seem like Toronto, specifically Toronto, is a hybrid of a
It
video
just happens here.
anime world. It's a specific place in the world that just has different rules. So it's like Toronto is like this weird amalgamation of pop culture. And it's just this boring place in the north that all of a sudden, if you fight, it turns into a Street Fighter place, and you get coins at the end that you can spend real money on.
Yeah. Now, when you kill people, when you beat them, they turn into coins. Like, I remember you and I, when the first fight, because the movie is a slow burn in the beginning. So are the books, to be fair. The books are a slow burn in the beginning. But after the first fight, Scott beats this kid, and he turns to the coins, and I'll give Michael Cera this. He's like, "Ooh, coins!" And he just gets down,
kills it. Yes. Mark, we were hooked after that.
We were in hooked. It, dog. And it's just like, I'll say this: after watching this Netflix show and going back and watching the movie, and we also played the game
we also played the video game all the time,
which is amazing. Every interpretation of this property always nails it. I can't think of one interpretation of Scott Pilgrim that's not good or doesn't represent what Scott Pilgrim as a universe is. The movie nails it.
When we went back to read the Scott Pilgrim comics, because again, as you said earlier, we were introduced to Scott Pilgrim from the movie. When we went back to read the comics, and by the way, I'm going to say some like deep stuff here. When we went back to read the comics, we realized that like, oh wow, they nailed it in the movie.
Yeah.
Like the comics are better, but like not by much. By like a like a little piece, you can barely blink an eye on how like
they're better because there's more. You have more time to like figure things out and learn about these characters. That's it.
But the movie was stellar. And like it was stellar because they nailed the story. They nailed the characters. They nailed the weird and awkward moments. They nailed everything about like what made Scott Pilgrim the book good. Yeah. And guess what? The anime did the exact same thing.
The
same thing.
I'm willing to say, tell me if I'm crazy, Nels. I think Scott Pilgrim, the movie, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, is the best adaptation ever made. When I'm talking about not like the movie itself, but from source material to on screen, I think it might be the best. And here's one reason why I also say that, because there are some big changes in the movie versus the books. But you know what? They make sense. They make so much like when Scott fights the twins, I think in the books he fights the robot.
He fights the robot.
But in the movie they do that, which I love that scene, the Amp versus Amp Battle of the Band scene, that just I think might work better than the robot fight in the book.
Dog. Yes, that's fantastic, but I need to acknowledge the change that shows why Edgar Wright is a monster. Scott versus Nega Scott. Scott versus Nega Scott. They use Michael Cera in the best way. Just him having an awkward conversation with himself. And he's like, oh, we're just going to get some bagels later. And, talk about that.
Because in the book, they have a straight up fight, right?
They have a straight up fight. Yeah, bro. Yeah. They have a straight up fight. And Scott gets his ass kicked.
But in the movie, it's just, they said it like Scott versus Nega Scott. And then the next scene, they're like, all right, I'll see you Tuesday. And they're like, what happened? He's like, oh, he's a good guy. We're just going to get brunch and
yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, okay, cool.
They use Michael Cera in like the perfect way. And it's like, it's not a significant change, but it's a shift.
Yeah.
It's like when we get introduced to Nega Scott is different. What happens during that is different. And they put it like at the end, and it's just, it's so perfect. It's so perfect. Mark, I just want to talk about this property as a whole, because this property was important. Scott Pilgrim special me because it's centered around a group of 20-something-year-olds trying to figure out their lives. And we watched this as 20-something-year-olds trying to figure out our lives. So outside of Coming to America, maybe Black Panther, I don't think I've ever seen another movie more than I've seen Scott Pilgrim. Like every time it was on, whether it's at my house or your house, I was watching it. It was my going to sleep movie for a good minute. And dog, when I say I have seen this movie more than like almost any movie, this includes Back to the Future. This includes The Dark Knight. This includes Spider-Verse. Like I have seen, this is my movie, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love, and you know this because I made you sit and watch it with me. So like this movie is like super important to me, and this property is important to me. Mark, the reason I know about these comic books is because you gave it to me. It's one of the best, if not the best gift you ever gave me. Is the Scott Pilgrim books, and I read them at least. I make it a point to read them every 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, I find myself always going back to them. Like they're good. The way they're drawn, it's just nice. I wish I could just have like pictures of or cells of scenes in the comic book because it's just, especially in color, it's just so nice, and it gets that atmosphere. It's like it really gets that, like I'm a 20 something figuring out shooting the shit with my friends. Just I got kind of nothing to do today, but I should be doing something But what you said about this movie meaning something to you, I want to get into that too, because I think maybe not on this show, but we've talked about how, well, I'll say I'm kind of proud of like young Black youth nowadays for one reason. Yep. I think there is this acceptance of like, we are all different. We are like one people, but we're all different. You like anime, if you like rock music, if you like hip hop, but you also like to watch NASCAR racing. Who cares? Like it, like do you, right?
Yep.
That there's this attitude of do you among Black youth now that I don't think we had growing up. But for some reason, this movie gave me like, not like permission, but it helped me be like, yo, it's cool. I can like these things. I can do these things. I can be a part of this culture and this culture, and like it, whatever. You know what I mean? And like, I don't know what it is about Scott Pilgrim that like kind of brought that out of me, but it made me more, I don't know if willing's the right word. I wasn't afraid to show like certain sides of myself to people after watching this.
Can I throw an idea out there, Mark? Because mind you, this is 2010. So Iron Man had just came out. Dark Knight just came out. We were on the surge of something. Like the society was turning a corner when it was coming out to some typical nerd stuff. I think why Scott Pilgrim kind of opened up the doors to allow us, and then us in particular, to kind of just like move around the world a little different and be a little bit more vocal about our nerdship, is because Scott Pilgrim did well. Like the books did well. The movie did well. And you see all these actors from this movie became stars afterwards. Like it kind of like the fact that a movie like this that had nerd topics like this did that well, it kind of just seemed like society was more welcoming of nerddom and Black, just like Black folks being like, yeah, I like this. I'm cool with it. And just like being like, okay, the world's accepting this. That's what's up. So
and to get into the like the properties, and I mean, let's just get into what did you think about the Netflix show?
Mark, it was like I was happy to be back. I was like, the band is back together, pun intended. And it was like riding a bike. The cool thing about Scott Pilgrim is I don't come in with that much expectations. I'm kind of just like, I just want to see them again. I just want to hear them again. And I got everything I wanted. Was it better than the movie? No. Was it better than the
Interesting.
Was it better than the comics? I don't know.
It's different.
It's different. But what I love about this, Mark, and I'm very curious of how you felt about this. I legit thought this whole time when Netflix was making this, they were just going to take the comics and they were going to make it animated. And you know what?
Yeah.
That was enough for me.
That was going to be enough for me too.
It's enough for me.
I've seen all this before hundreds of times, but keep it coming, baby.
Keep it coming. I'm okay with it. I'll make 2 changes. I don't care. Like, I'm fine with it. That's not what we got.
No.
There were no hints. There was like nothing leading up to it to make me realize, like, oh, this is gonna be the same story but from a different perspective. If they made like, it was like a Watchmen. They did a Watchmen. They did like an alternate universe. And it's like, I was not expecting that. I had no idea what was coming. And so after the first episode, and funny enough, Mark, I'm sure you realized that I had not finished the first episode because you're like, oh, you're not done yet. Oh, okay. You kept it moving. You're like, oh, you haven't finished watching it. Okay, because you knew after I finished watching the first episode, I was like, oh, well,
yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch all of this.
And spoiler alert. So the difference is in the Netflix show, Scott kind of takes a backseat role, and Ramona. Let's say Ramona and the evil exes.
Yep.
Because in this universe, let's establish that. We haven't established that. In this universe, Scott Pilgrim, our main character, he's 23 years old and he's dating a 17-year-old. He meets this new girl, this new mystery girl named Ramona. They end up going out, and she has evil exes, league of evil exes that he has to fight. 7 evil exes. And the comic is like him fighting an ex, dealing with Ramona, dealing with life, finding another ex. So in the new show on Netflix, it's pretty much the same beat for beat. There's some minor changes. I wonder why. Like the Pac-Man joke when he first meets Ramona, he talks about Sonic. I thought that was it. That was a nice little. He's like, yeah, the same guy played 2 different versions of the character, like I'm doing right now, voicing Scott Pilgrim.
Yes.
But it's pretty much beat for beat until that first X fight, and the X beats Scott. And as far as we know, Scott's dead. And
Matthew Patel, who is the first X, is a very minor character in all of this. So, like, for him to win the fight, number one, let alone have a prominent role in the rest of the show, is shocking.
Yeah.
But anyways, Mark, sorry to interrupt you. Please
No. And so it goes into Ramona, and she's trying to find out what happened to Scott, and all the other people, all the other band members, young Neil, Knives, Kim. We dive more with them, and not only that, we learn more about the exes, and they get like story arcs and stuff like that. I have my own theory why this was done. Not even theory, but just guess. But why do you think Netflix decided to go this route?
I think because my assumption is Brian Lee O'Malley was like, I don't want to make I'm not interested in like putting in time to like just retell the story. And I'm not interested. I definitely don't want to make a continuation of the story. And somebody must have said like, well, why don't we just tell the same story but from a different perspective? And that's what motivated him to do the story. That's my assumption. Because I
think you're right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that, but also it was a different time when Scott, and I don't find Scott Pilgrim problematic at all. Right. Well, let me take that back. Him dating Knives is really problematic.
Yeah, even though but it just shows him being dumb.
Yeah. He says, I don't know what he says. He's like, you're dating a 17-year-old Scott. He's like, well, we've only held hands or something like that. So that's problematic, right? But other than that, I don't think the movie's problematic. It ages pretty well. But I don't think in this day and age you get a protagonist like Scott anymore. Just like this kind of like loser that like, I don't think people want a protagonist like that anymore. And so and not to like,
because it reeks with white privilege.
It does, and not to steer the ship this way, but like people, you went woke. Not necessarily. You just gave Ramona more agency in this movie, and then in return, like we learned more about the exes, and I don't know. I liked it. I was a little like.
I would argue it rewards the fans because we don't know jack about Ramona.
We don't.
We've a movie and a book series in a video game.
And we still don't know nothing
And
about
we still
Ramona.
didn't know jack about Ramona. This gave us the most we've ever gotten from Ramona. We still
It
don't know
did.
much. We still don't
Yeah,
know
we
much.
still don't know a lot.
But we learned just like how she moves, how she thinks.
Yeah.
And with the exes, we like it was dope diving into their backstories. Like
Yeah.
that was really cool. And seeing how they felt life, like their lives after Ramona. Now that you're mentioning it, damn, that's dope, man.
But
Like just
it's funny with the exes. I love, when the difference. So Scott loses to Patel. Patel then challenges Gideon, the leader of the exes, to a fight. He wins, and he kind of disbands the exes. So it's like without this league, this like group to hate Ramona, they're all kind of like lost and kind of like directionless, and they have to like figure out life. It's pretty cool. When I first watched this, I did not know how to feel about it. I was like, I kind of had a reverse way I feel about these Disney live action movies. I don't care. I'm not for any of these Disney live action remakes, and it's not because I'm like nostalgia purist. I just think they don't hit, and I don't think they're that good. I just don't. I had this reversal with this. The movie just has so much energy and pacing, and it's just so full of life that I felt like this animation couldn't capture the energy that this live action movie was giving me. And so that was kind of like off putting to me a little bit. But then I like soaked it in and I watched a couple more episodes, rewatched them. And I was like, okay, it's a different take. It's still Scott Pilgrim. It's still true blue Scott Pilgrim, but it's just a different take. But I don't think it's better than the movie, man. And that's funny to say because animation, you are limitless. You are limitless to do whatever you want. But Edgar Wright is a master in his craft.
Edgar Wright's a beast. I agree. I think the movie was better.
Yeah.
I definitely think the movie was better. Like, Edgar Wright is a beast, but it was also just the time. Because like the time of when this came out with the cast that they had to do what they did, they caught lightning in a bottle. And like I would argue Edgar Wright, that's just what he does. Because like if you look at all his other movies, he has the brother's pretty like low key Mark. He's a really good director. I think we need to talk about him just being a really good director even more. But what I appreciate about you is like he is a stand-up comedian who uses the art of film to tell his jokes. That is nasty. That's some like Robin Williams stuff right there. So
yeah, it is. He's not afraid to like. I think he's not afraid. Like, yo, we're gonna film everything in this room to get this one scene, and it's this one little thing, but it's gonna like hit hard when people see it in the movie. But I gotta, we're talking about animation. I'm a voiceover guy. I gotta bring this up, and I'm glad the band's back together. Right? I'm so glad everyone out of their busy schedules, all these Oscar winners and MCU vets had time for this little silly anime. Right?
I know where you're going,
but this proves it. Just because you are an actor doesn't mean you are a voice actor. Some of these guys are hitting. I think Chris Evans, he was my favorite part.
Kills it
in the first movie, and he's my favorite part of this story.
Hey, Chris Evans know how to do voiceover. he might be fine just doing voice acting.
He might be. I think there's even like a joke. There's a joke where like Lucas Lee is like, I can't even get an acting gig anymore. I just have to voice over cartoons or something like that. I'm like, yo, that could work, dog, because you kind of killing it.
You're kind of killing it. You're doing great.
But like some people, like the woman who plays Ramona, I don't think she was like really hitting it in this anime. I love
Michael
Audrey.
Cera kind of did okay. I mean, he's Michael Cera, but I was expecting more from Michael Cera, to be honest with you.
He starts kind of weak, but I think when he goes into like the future and meets himself, he gets a little bit better. Audrey Plaza, is that her name?
Yeah,
Plaza?
Aubrey Plaza. Yeah,
Aubrey Plaza.
That's great.
She's good, but like I was like, man, it's not there. It's almost there. Like it's almost fitting that puzzle piece, but yeah, like I was like, and the same problem is with I have with Marvel's What If. I'm like, yo, just because these guys can act does not mean they can voice act. That is an art, and like maybe it would have been better just to like cast this with like new people, but I think everyone wanted to be here. You could tell they wanted to be here. They tried their best.
They like this property.
Yeah,
Like
and
that's the
that's why
one
they're
thing I
back.
think.
They're
Yeah, they really dig this probably, and know what? They probably like Edgar Wright too.
yeah,
Like they're
yeah.
probably fans of him as well, because they signed up to be a part of this. Like, Mark, feel you. The nostalgia is why I enjoy these voice actors, but like Kieran Culkin and Chris Evans killed it.
They did.
Everyone else,
Everyone else, they showed up, right? They showed
everyone
up. They
else
did
showed
their
up. Everyone else. I would say Mae Whitman, who is probably the most seasoned voice actress out of everyone here, was okay.
Yeah,
And she kills it in most of her animated like career.
yeah,
But for this
yeah.
one, I was like, she doesn't seem like the most seasoned voice acting vet. My thought is this though. This is an anime, and they did get like quality Japanese voice actors to be a part of this. So I wonder if you watch it in the Japanese with like subtitles, if it hits different. And that's something I'll
So
probably try right after this.
you know what's funny? Because I was looking at like the sync, and I was like, some of these lip syncs seem a little off. I wonder if that's intentional because if and this is the pop culture, this is how like dope Scott Pilgrim is as a property. When you play the video game, it was a downloadable game. I had it on Xbox 360.
Yep.
So I don't know if y'all remember 16-bit side scrollers, but Nils, you remember when like the code would break down in the game and like certain things in the background would start turning into like numbers,
yeah,
or they would just like kind of disappear. That happens in the Scott Pilgrim video game, and I remember this happened to us one time, and I was so mad. It freezes and glitches on purpose.
yes,
randomly.
we were pissed.
We were pissed because that would happen with Super Nintendo and Sega. It would just stop. It would like playing the music and like, and you're like, what the?
I was like, hey, yo, Mark, you know what's crazy though? We legit thought it froze, not thinking that we were playing on an Xbox 360.
Yeah. Well, like, what the hell? Now I gotta blow the cartridge.
Oh, here we go again. We gotta blow the cartridge out.
But then, when we thought about it, we had an appreciation like, yo, that's some like next level dedication to your craft. That like we're gonna make this downloadable streaming game freeze like it's a cartridge game. And so I wondered that was intentional in this Netflix show, that like the sync wasn't really on because it's supposed to be a Japanese sub first, then dub.
So. When I saw the Japanese cast, I was like, oh, that's where they made the investment. Like they made this for Japan, bro. So like, yeah, I'm curious because it was off. Some of the syncing was off, and I was like, yo, this is too high of quality.
Yeah.
Too big of names for them to intentionally have the sync be off. Unless it was like, oh, this is a 1990s anime. Yeah. And that's like, yeah, that would definitely be off. No shade for kids. Just just speaking facts.
But I mean, no, I dug it, man. I think where it goes, and it definitely sets it up for hopefully there's another. I kind of want more of this now. I'm interested to see where everyone's going. I love Nega Scott is nice. Not Nega Scott. I'm sorry. Even older Scott.
Yeah, I was curious, Mark, how you felt about the 37 and 47-year-old Mark. I found 37-year-old Scott interesting. Like, I didn't know how I initially felt about him. I reflected a little bit, and knowing the Scott that we know in the comics, it's not surprising that he'd end up like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, one thing goes off in that relationship, and he doesn't even fight for it like that. He's just kind of regresses back to Scott. Like, this man got his life together.
He did.
And then got back with Ramona in the comics. Yeah. And then their relationship got good. So like the first sign of like roughness in their like marriage, and like Ramona does what Ramona does, which is run away, and Scott just like deflates and regresses and does some dumb stuff. Yeah, they're both toxic. And does some dumb stuff, like go back in the past and try to like mess up the relationship so he never was him again.
Yeah.
Like that's some stuff that the comic book Scott would do. So like when I saw the 37-year-old Scott, at first I was just like, I don't know how to feel about this. and then I was like, oh no, that's exactly what he would do. So
He
yeah.
that's the Scott that doesn't know how to act around what's her name from Demon Head, who covers
Oh,
his
Envy Adams. Yeah.
yeah, who covers his head when anyone talks about his hair. You
Hmm.
know, no, that he is that is the 37-year-old Scott is a Scott from the comics. And then Ramona says, like, you didn't even fight. Like you didn't even come talk. Like he's like, oh, we could have got back together. Like, I don't know, maybe. But you just left for 10 years. Like
She was like, dude, no text, no phone call. I'm like, bro, you didn't talk to her for 10 years, but you plotted
yeah.
for 10 years how to fight
No bull.
all the 7 evil exes at once.
No bull.
What's wrong with you, bro?
No bull. I do.
He
It was
became a vegan, Mark.
yo, and he wouldn't
He
be.
became a vegan so he can have vegan powers
I
to take on the exes.
I like that joke when present Scott or young Scott goes into the future and he's talking to 37-year-old Scott and he meets the robot and the robot lets him look into the past and so he's controlling the robot and it's that fun little kind of like joke where the robot's like not really running anywhere but he's just running into the wall and it looks like a video game. Scott's like, wow, video games are awesome. I was like, that's a
Yes.
nice little
Yes.
little nod. But
That robot was a nice touch. I'm
yeah,
glad they gave the robot some time to
he got
shine.
some shine. I'm surprised. What's her name? The drummer girl with the robot arm isn't in this. The Clash
Yeah,
of
but
Demon Head.
yeah, but I guess if you're gonna go the route that they went, they focused a lot on they didn't even really focus on envy that much. You know what I'm saying? Like they
Nah, they
focused a
didn't.
lot on the exes, like the actual exes. Envy sang a song at the funeral, and then Envy
Yes,
was on the movie scene, and that was it for Envy. Envy has a whole book dedicated to her in
she
the
does.
original run.
She
And
does.
she's a significant part of the movie. I mean, like the song that we all remember is her song in that movie. You
Can
remember
we
it?
can we talk about the music real quick?
Yeah.
I think that's another reason why the movie's better. That soundtrack is so dope. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. It's like it's an uphill battle. You can't like that movie soundtrack from when we first opened, and it's that long shot where Nye's watching them play, and they're playing. I think it's called
Hmm.
like Garbage Truck, and
Hmm.
then the scene where Envy starts playing "Hello Again, Friend
Friend
of a."
of a friend.
Hello again, friend of a friend. I knew you were. I come and go, was waiting for the world to end. Now that the truth is just a rule that you can bend. You crack the whip, shape shift and trick the past.
I think that was another point we looked at each other and was like,
This movie's so good. Oh no! And then Threshold, which I think is my favorite song, when they play in the Battle of the Bands.
oh man, nah, that Envy song, my favorite song. But I feel you, bro. That song is dope. That song is dope. But that Envy song was hitting it, man. People, I still go on YouTube to this day just to hear that song every now and then.
No,
And
that's a well directed like scene too, and I could have watched. It's only like the first like 30 seconds of that song that they show in the movie, but like they could have spent the whole 5 minutes and played that whole song because like Edgar Wright was killing that joint. Yeah, man. It's so funny revisiting this property, man. There's one scene that and I definitely looked at it differently. Not even differently. I just appreciated Scott's reaction in the movie. The scene where he fights who's the woman? The girl
oh,
X.
Roxy?
Roxy, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, your evil ex-boyfriends, and Roman's like exes. And he's like, why do you keep saying that? Roxy and Ramona were lovers, whatever. And then when Scott beats Roxy, I remember he that's when they have that fight and they kind of
Mhm.
like break up a little bit. I was like, why did they break up? Dog, I went back and looked at that. Yo, if I had this is the fourth ex
Yep.
that my girl I had to fight, right? I'm just trying to live, right? And so like these people are trying to kill me. So this is the fourth one. Not only did I kill this girl, I killed her because I made her climax to death by touching her knee. That would psychologically like mess me up. I would need a couple drinks at
Yeah, he leans in on the Michael Cera on that point.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh no.
And then I love when you go back, because Ramona tells him how to beat Roxy, and she's like, the back of her knee, and he touches it, and she like, she's like, she does her thing. When she's on the ground, she's like, you'll never make her feel like this. And like, Michael Cera is like, what is going on right now? He does a real good job in that scene.
He was disturbed.
Like, what the hell is happening?
He was disturbed. He got a lot of information in a short amount of time. And he had to process all of that.
Oh, man.
And there was a lot of coins, too. I don't even know if did he pick it up? I don't even know if he picked it up.
I think he left him there. He's just so disgusted. He's like, not today. Not today. But no, man, I enjoyed myself. It was refreshing to get back into Scott Pilgrim. No, man, Edgar Wright is a genius. I could talk about that movie for hours. There are literal, like, come on, Nels. He knocked the highlights out of her hair.
Her hair.
I mean, they just so many good. The vegan police. Oh, and even back then, I forgot who are the two guys that play the vegan police,
Thomas
but
Jane, like the future Punisher.
Yes, like heavy hitter actors for this one little small part. But it always live in my head. You had gelato. Gelato's not vegan. Milk and eggs, bitch.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Man, the movie was great. The movie was great. They don't even really explain vegan powers still to this day.
They still don't. I love it.
I think in the anime, I'm pretty sure he still had his vegan powers, even though he was eating like cheese. Well, I guess you know what? They never show it go, because as soon as he ate like a piece of green again, bam, he got his vegan powers again.
Here's the thing: it only went away in the comic and the movie because the vegan police came and took it away. Yeah, because he was like, "Isn't there a 3-strike system?" And they went through all the things like he's like, chicken isn't vegan. So it's, I guess it's, you have it until the vegan police come and take it away from you.
Yo, another thing from the book compared to the movie, that Todd Ingram fight was intense in the book.
Yes.
That was like a half a book.
Yeah.
And he was whooping him. That was a cell fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that was like a big boss fight. I think that was the hardest fight besides the Gideon fight for Scott. Like he was going through it emotionally and physically. He's like, yo, dog, this is the antithesis of me. His name is Todd Ingram. I'm Scott Pilgrim. He has my ex-girl. He's a better bass player than me. He better looking than me, and he's a vegan. He's better than me in every way, shape, or form.
I was a little disappointed because I wanted to see that in anime form, because the Todd fight and versus Scott fight, that as a work of cinematic art, just like the framing, how the lighting, when he picks Scott up with his vegan powers, and then when he hits Scott through that wall and you can't see anything, but you start hearing the dun 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 dun, and then, bro, Edgar Wright is a monster. You see Scott playing the bass, but then the camera comes in, but then you see Todd's feet float in front of the camera because it's just so good. And I'm sorry, this Netflix show was was punching up. It was Ivan Drago versus Little Rocky, because like the movie just hit so hard.
Pre-Russia training.
Apollo Creed versus Ivan, because and I don't want to like say like that's what the movie's better, but it's like it's the same reason why when you hear people be like, oh well, Korra's not as good as Avatar. Yeah, well, Avatar is one of the greatest shows ever made.
Ever.
Like that doesn't mean Korra's bad.
Korra had a tough job, and it
had a tough job,
and it delivered. But it wasn't going to be one of the greatest shows ever.
Come on,
what I'm saying? Like, come on, set some realistic expectations. Oh man, look, we should probably wrap up because we shouldn't get anywhere close to Avatar talk. Go a whole nother level. Well, Mark, anything else you want to share about the Scott Pilgrim anime?
I want more. I think there's the only thing that worries me is like these are very busy actors. Even like the ones who aren't like superstars right now. I mean, they're all A-listers for the most part, but I don't know how you're going to get these people to commit. But that's also the good thing. It being voice acting, they probably can pay them a little less than it would for a live action appearance. And it's like you can do this on your time at your house. You just need to be in a recording studio. So I would like more. I'm going to go back to the books. Kind of makes me want a sequel series in the books. I mean, I'm good where Scott is.
Mark, I don't think we're gonna get any of that.
Nah. I think
I don't
Brian
think we're gonna
O'Malley's
get any of
done
that.
writing. He's definitely
Yeah.
done writing Scott Pilgrim. Nah, man, but like good hit. This show had good jokes too, man. Of course, Lucas Lee when he's talking to I forgot he's talking to a leaguer and they're talking about him being an actor. He's like, I don't even read the scripts anymore. Off the dome. He's just like,
Yes.
like, what are you talking
They're
about?
like- It's like, is that why you said let's party the first 5 minutes of this other movie? Can't recall. And then he got a drink and he was like, let's party.
Young
Chris Evans
Neil
killed this, man.
He
Chris
did,
Evans
dog.
killed it.
He killed it, man. Young Neil. I like seeing him having a bigger because he was that funny background character in the movie, dog.
He sure
like
was.
and you are now Neil.
Neil.
He just holds his shoulders up. He just so
It's like,
proud.
oh.
Oh.
Yo, and in the anime, they didn't even do that. They just called him
Yeah.
old
Neil.
young Neil.
Old young Neil. Hey, I wanted to ask you something, and I don't know if I'm like thinking too much into this. So in the anime, before we wrap up, I guess they established Kim is a lesbian or is at least dating a girl or something.
Yeah,
She's bi.
Kim is curious.
Yeah, she says that. She said she's curious.
She's curious. So I don't think she would give herself a title yet, but she's trying to figure out if she is because she thinks there's something there, potentially there. So she's exploring it, which again, funny enough, similar to the book and the movie, right? So like, she shows a little hints of like, oh, I might try it. So yeah, it seems like a theme that they're pulling off of.
When the show's ending and Kim and her date are at the coffee shop and Lucas Lee's working at the coffee shop, he says like, Lucas Lee at your service, and Kim says whatever or something, and she leaves and he's like whatever, and he has this smile on his face. I don't know what like, because there's a lot of that in Scott Pilgrim. There's a lot of like, people just say things and they leave or just say random things. Do you think that means anything? Does Kim and Lucas have a future? Or
he said whatever because that's what he said when he saw that Ramona broke up with him and was making out with Todd Ingram. His reaction to seeing Ramona make out with Todd Ingram was whatever.
Yeah.
And just like, that's when Lucas Lee became Lucas Lee. Mm-hmm. So when Kim said whatever to him, he was like, yeah, whatever. He's like, actually, I have moved on. Like, I can actually now say whatever because that's not a part of my identity anymore.
See, man, so good. Yeah, not so good. But I like the X's. I think Lucas and Gideon being friends, being buddies is hilarious. Gideon's little backstory. I love him.
Wow. Has a completely different name. Gordon
Goose. And then when what's her name comes back, she's like, I've been gone for 90 effing minutes. like did all that stuff to the house.
Yes. She was upset.
Oh man. No, man, I loved it. I will never miss the opportunity to watch, talk, play anything involving Scott Pilgrim. One of my probably favorite properties ever created.
If it's not obvious, I feel the exact same way. Scott Pilgrim is near and dear to my heart. It will be for the rest of my life. I will gladly take any and every more different mediums to absorb Scott Pilgrim. But I'm pretty sure this is probably going to be one of the last ones that he does. Like I think he's good off that. I would love for this to have as many seasons as possible. and they could do whatever they want. Like, go crazy, be Rick and Morty, go crazy. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know if Brian Lee O'Malley has said countless times that like he wrote Scott when he was in that point of his life, and he's now like 44, and so he's like, I can't really
tap into that.
Yeah. So we'll see. But
you made me think about something that I want to talk about real quick before we get out. When you said be Rick and Morty, I will say, I think, and people don't understand what this was and what the property is. No one was really doing that. You know, now we get a lot of like, oh, this is a video game, or this is a like wink wink, isn't it like an anime? But like no one was really leaning into that stuff. And Scott Pilgrim the World just accepts this is what we are. So I'd be willing to say like a lot of things that we enjoy in pop culture, Scott Pilgrim set the foundation. Like I don't know if we'd have like a Rick or Morty or like a what movie, like a not Endgame, but just that kind of like splicing of genres and
everything everywhere all at once.
Yeah, exactly. No, Scott Pilgrim walked, so everything all at once could fly, jump, turn into dragons, whatever. You know?
Yeah, Mark, I remember 2010. I remember what life was like before 2010. I remember what the hell happened after 2010. And I think the nexus event was Scott Pilgrim. I legit do. Like, this is supposed to be a niche pop culture movie that folks love like 10 years in the future. I'm talking like Buckaroo Banzai type stuff, like stuff that they're like, no one batted an eye, but in like 10 years, folks will then accept that this was like actually an interesting piece of property. Yeah. This was immediate. A niche pop culture movie became an immediate hit. And it's
I got a question for you.
So we have like now accepted this kind of like medium or kind of property in this society now. But what's your question?
If it wasn't for Scott Pilgrim, do we get like Kamala Harris and like her type of show? Like, because isn't her show very comic booky and very like?
You mean Kamala Khan? Because Kamala Harris is our vice.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is
without Scott Pilgrim, there'd be no Kamala.
There'd be no Kamala.
Hello again. Her and Joe are the Clash.
I was like, why does he think Scott Pilgrim made it so Kamala
I'm gonna let him talk though. I'm gonna let him.
Yeah, I was like, maybe. Let's see where he goes with this.
Oh man. Oh, so stupid.
I think we do. I think we do because, you know, Crazy Rich Asians was a thing. And I think it showed that there's money in like deep diving into cultures and societies. So I think with the success of Crazy Rich Asians, you're going to feel a little bit more safe to go out on a limb and do a Kamala Khan TV show. So.
Yeah, no, you're right. Scott Pilgrim is the nexus.
But we wouldn't have Marvel. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if Marvel would have gone this hard. Like, mind you, Disney didn't buy Marvel until after 2010.
Yeah.
Like the first two Iron Mans were Paramount. You know what I'm saying? So
I think even the Avenger movie was a Paramount joint.
There you go.
But I don't think you get something like, you're not willing to try something like Deadpool unless like something like Scott Pilgrim exists.
Yeah, man.
So, man.
I absolutely think so.
So good.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark, for having us reflect on this amazing piece of property. And thank you, Pop Cult. Thank you for listening. We have a new episode every month. You can find us on all social media at Pop Cult Parent, POPCULTPARENT. Visit us at www.popcultparent.com. Email us at popcultparent@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate us, review, and subscribe. And as always, join the cult. Peace.